I'm becoming familiar now with speaking with good friends across the water, so it's enjoying these conversations that we've been having.
I believe Ireland is very famous for reconciliation, for having that difficult conversation. So there is an overarching principle, and that principle is humanity. And so today what you're doing, truly I believe you're doing the work of God.
Underneath everything is one central truth, expressed in different ways. And the person who brought this out in the modern context, and the person to whom we owe our tradition, is Swami Vivekananda, who in 1893 attended the Parliament of Religions, first of its kind. His opening speech points out that there is an intrinsic harmony behind everything, and that he hopes that the bell that calls everybody to assembly will be the death knell of all fanaticism, all persecution, and all of these things.
February 4th, a historic document was signed last year on human fraternity, crafted by two people, the Holy Father and the Grand Mufti of Al-Azhar, both of whom today were on a Zoom call, conversing how to go forward. But to be honest, there's really two things that come out of this declaration. And these two things are personified. One is to work for world peace, and the other is to live together in harmony. And I think despite the current climate, this is something which is achievable. One thing COVID has led to is people's prejudice come out even more. Xenophobia, bigotry, and so forth. You just got to go to Europe and see it. Xenophobia, polarization increasing, and it's only natural. Where there's uncertainty, where there's fear, what happens is that people look towards the other with confusion sometimes, with fear. But the idea is to bring people together, and that's what you're doing tonight.
My father's generation was the post-Holocaust generation. So they had in their DNA this fear of being decimated overnight, of the horrors of the Holocaust, which with each succeeding generation, while we work really hard to keep the memory alive and honor the dead and the victims, it becomes a little bit easier for succeeding generations to reach out to the other, because they don't bring that fear with them. So the Edinburgh Interfaith Association was actually my window or my door to do something about the anti-Semitism, the hatred, the misunderstanding, the intolerance that I had experienced.
And so, of course, this is historically unique. It's historically unusual apart from anything else, and has broken many traditions. People feel very sad about that. But the other thing is that we are very resilient, because we have gone through so much more. In talking to you, the Jewish community, it isn't so long ago, it was only last week, that we were having a commemoration of the Holocaust, the most tragic, the most shocking thing in the 20th century. But today, we still have this conflict, man on man. Man's inhumanity to man is still there, with thousands, possibly millions, and certainly millions and millions of refugees as a fallout from what we can only describe as selfishness and ignorance in the world, this lack of harmony. And so we have been through and are going through difficult times, but we have been through worse. And this, we should take comfort from this.
I think my experiences with Interfaith is a lot more than just having cups of coffee and biscuits. I think really it's about the human connection. I find it's about talking to people, and I find it's feeling their pain. I find that in times of difficulty, when you're seeing people polarized, the best thing you can do is extend your table to them and bring them in. And I think this is something what you do well, to extend your tables, to help those people who are being oppressed, to help those people who don't have a voice, And I think this is what it's about, from interfaith to transcend to multi-faith, to work together on initiatives. And we've seen some wonderful initiatives in these last 11 months. We've seen Christians and Muslims distribute food to the homeless. We've seen homeless people, for example, in London, 90% of all the homeless people within 14 days were taken off the streets because of the work that you were doing. We've seen in Edinburgh, we've seen in Glasgow, initiatives whereby people are being fed today because of religious communities.
Now, this can, of course, present a challenge because the social aspect of humanity wants to gather in a communal way, in synagogues, in mosques, in temples, in churches.
We know anecdotally there are more people attending worship services, ritual events online since the pandemic has started than there were prior to the pandemic in the pews. And I mean significantly more people. So this is an opportunity, I think, to reach these folks through technology. We have more choices than ever before. But the question is, how do we create a hybrid approach that brings us closer, heart to heart, using this technology? So my father experienced, as a first-generation Jew in America, anti-Semitism. And to combat this and to make a better world for his children, he said, I want them, and I'll never forget his words, to get to know you better.
You are finding in this day and age that quite a few communities have radical elements to them. And I think just not faith communities, but also secular communities as well. You're seeing secular far left and far right activity which is going on. And I feel that this is a problem for all of us. And the only way we can combat that is when we work together. When we show that we're together, when we show that we don't have prejudice.
I absolutely agree with you, Imam. I've worked with migrants groups in Ireland for a long time. And the key issue for communities is feeling that they're part of the wider community and that they can access all the bits of being a citizen. And that they're respected. I noticed, Imam, you mentioned that one of the things you were asked about was that the ecumenism, the Sunni Shia challenge. And as I say, we know those challenges in Ireland because we've had those, we still have them.
I unfortunately feel that this divide between Shia and Sunni is increasing. So, I think we can learn a lot from Ireland. We can learn a lot from the reconciliation work that you guys have done. And I think that the tools which you guys have adopted over a period of decades is something which would be valuable for our communities when it comes to reconciliation.
I think to work in a charitable way, that's indeed is a way to come closer together, because that is what God wants us to do.
So, we're looking for allies within our communities. And we have to try and appeal to their sense of justice, for social justice, for climate change. We have to try and find commonalities that bring these people together, because it's a journey, and everybody's on a different stage of an interfaith journey.
It's like on a date, if there's a joint activity, then, you can kind of really connect.
The sad part about our city, the eternal shame, if you will, is today 25% of all of our children in Edinburgh live in poverty, and many go to bed hungry each evening. If ever there was a need for an interfaith association, this last statistic confirms we still have a lot of work to do together.
Like your wonderful acknowledgement to Jesus. I mean, this kind of thing is where when a Christian, a Catholic listens to you, a Christian listens, wow, this brings us closer to Muslims. I wish we could all do this, including our own religious leaders.
Develop something which is known as Scriptural Reasoning, where we sit down for three faiths. You take a piece of the Old Testament, a piece of the New Testament, and a piece of the Quran, and you analyze it together.
Yeah.
And you come to realize, wow, actually, we're the same.
We're the same, exactly.
Exactly. We've got with it. So, and I think that's something which is important. Education, And I think from education, after that, initiatives to get to know one another.
Which leads to the underlying unity current in all religions. All religions, according to us, are true. All paths are true. All paths lead to the same goal.
Well, Judaism and Hinduism, as you said, we don't proselytize because we believe that, in fact, there are different paths to God, or there are different paths to the ultimate.
That man to man, and I add woman to woman, the world o'er, shall brothers and sisters be for that. And because of the work you're doing in Dublin and that we are attempting to do in Edinburgh, I believe we're closer than ever before.
I think if you do go to the mosque, you'll get a wonderful meal, and it'll be a hot meal. So do try go to the mosque, and nobody's going to want to convert you. Don't worry about that. But you'll make good friends, and you'll have a dapper meal, as they say.
There is a statement in the Rig Veda. The Rig Veda is the oldest of the Vedas, and it says, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahda Vadanti. Truth is one, but wise people call us variously. And I think that's a very, very important statement to make.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you, Swami. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And come visit us in Scotland when you can.
Yes, I will try.